not going to read his whole bio, I'll let you read it. But if you take a look, Rick's been in this technology space for a couple of years, Rick?
Few.
And he runs a very successful and significantly, rapidly growing tech organization and provides, among other things, you provide external IT or management services for your clients?
We do IT outsourcing, we provide development services as well as marketing services.
The point being that he gets to talk to a lot of you folks in other companies and is finding out what's working and what's not working. They're just not making recommendations and walking away from it, but getting involved in the realities of it. And so Rick has also brought some literature back there about AI and some of the stuff on the back table if you want some more information at the end of the meeting. But Rick is an expert. He's going to share his experiences and thinking and suggestions with you. And we're going to do that for about a half an hour. And then we're going to break into a roundtable and discuss what you're dealing with and what Rick said and how that pertains. And then figure out as a table what question you want to come back to Rick with toward the end of the meeting and kind of really dive down into some more depth about what your specific concerns are. So I'm going to ask Rick and Cheryl, one of our directors and an executive coach, and let's see, what else would you like to say about you, Cheryl? Well, she's been a chief HR officer at a bank, and she's been part of this organization for 2.5, 3 years now.
Yes.
Yeah, and so these two are going to have a conversation for you all. And I'm going to have to do mic checks, and then we're going to get going.
Okay, and also a longtime friend of Rick.
You're so So Rick,
I can say that, right? I already said it, so.
what number do you have on your unit?
What number do I have on the unit? Oh, 1.
One. You're number 1. Okay, so that's how I
I have two of them.
Rick, how are you doing?
Uh-huh.
I'm doing good.
Okay, give you a little there. Okay, I think we're ready to go here. So I would say, first of all, can you guys give them a warm welcome?
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So excited to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you, Rick.
Sure.
And I'm sure everyone's ready for us to kind of jump in and find out more about AI. So
Sure.
The focus of our conversation, just to level set for context, is of course small and medium-sized businesses. And so I am a business leader in a small and medium-sized business. What would be some of the top indicators that I'm ready to implement an AI solution?
Well, I think the first thing is taking a look at what AI is and isn't. One of the challenges in the industry right now is there's a lot of hype around AI, just like there was in the 90s for those of us that have been around a while. You know, it's like the internet was going to change the world in a day. Like Amazon, for example, came out in the late 90s, started selling books. And then this was thinking by the year 2000, we will never leave our houses. That didn't happen, it just took 20 extra years. So I think AI is kind of in the same boat to some extent. So when you look at it from a small to medium business perspective, I think one of the challenges that we're seeing now is there's a lot of pressure by boards and other people in the organization to implement AI in some way, to take advantage of some of the productivity gains that you can get from AI. And there's a lot of different ways to do that today. I mean, we've all heard of ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, Perplexity, DALL-E, all these different technologies that are out there. And then of course, every industry has their own set of tools. Like if you look in the medical industry, EMRs like Epic, which is what Brown Medicine and Care New England use to manage their patient loads, those all contain a level of AI within the EMR itself to try to diagnose conditions and give the doctor some level of diligence so they can hopefully make a better recommendation. The big thing about AI to know about is that it does, to Bob's point earlier, you put an article on your table, it does hallucinate, it's not perfect. It's not ready to be unleashed like autonomously on the world, I don't think, from what I've seen. So from an SMB or a mid-market perspective, even in the commercial space, you've got to be looking at it from what can it do for me, and then what are the business problems I'm trying to solve with it. I think that's where you have to start. So one of the business problems you might want to solve is, how do I get my people to be more productive with their emails and their messaging and their PowerPoint templates and their Word documents? AI is great for that today. So take this content, summarize it, put it in a PowerPoint deck, and then help me present it to people in a meaningful way. it can cut a lot of time off, and it may give you skills that you didn't know you needed, in the wording of that. It still has to be looked at by a human, but it will accelerate the amount of time that you're, decrease the amount of time it will take to put that together, and at the same time, it will help you create a better presentation because it has much more knowledge to draw upon than you do. That's drawing on the collective knowledge of humanity to some or to a greater or lesser extent, depending on how you look at it. So,
I just mentioned at my table that I launched a newsletter. No, I'm not asking you all to subscribe, but if you want to. I use AI in that way, and it makes it a lot easier to get some content ready, and then I, of course, rewrite and make it so that it's my own. But yeah, it's amazing.
well, marketing is a great use case for AI right now because of not only creating the content for the newsletter, but there's a lot of things it can do on the agentic side. I'm sure most of you have heard of agentic AI. So what it can do today is kind of like a second phase of this, which is go to my website, scrape all the people that have touched my website, take that information, run it through LinkedIn, run it through Zoom Info, compile it into a spreadsheet, and give it to my sales team, right? So then they've got information on your site. Now, is it perfect? No. Does it miss something? Sure. But, I mean, that's a really powerful tool that you have in marketing. What we're going to have tomorrow, this is not today, but tomorrow, it'll go through, scrape the website, take the information, put it in a spreadsheet, make phone calls, and then gauge interest, and then give those warm leads to your salespeople. And then who knows in 10 years from now, maybe it will be the salespeople. But I mean, it's moving fast, but it's the top of the pipe cycle right now. So people think it can do things that it can't. But it will, over time, keep evolving. But it's not alive, it doesn't do those sort of things. It's probabilistic instead of deterministic, right? When you put two numbers in a calculator, 2 + 2 is 4, that's deterministic, it's just the way it is. Probabilistic is what AI does, which it makes assumptions based on mathematical models, and that's how it assembles data. So some of those assumptions are good, some of those assumptions are bad. So.
You can't read a magazine or listen to the news or anything these days without hearing AI or some write-up about AI. You were starting to get into this a little bit. As a smaller mid-sized business leader, what should I know about what AI can and cannot do for me and my business? What are some of the misconceptions?
So some of the misconceptions are it's just going to automate everything that it can do. Like, for example, we do development. Last summer we merged with Brave River and they have a development team, so they write a lot of code. I think, when you look at AI and GitHub, for development tools, or, you still have to look at the human element of that. So it can write the code, it can comment on the code, it can quality assurance the code, but it's not going to run an entire application for you. You still need that human element of being able to do that. And right now there's an assumption, because there's a lot of hype, that it can do more than it can. And then in some ways, it changes every day. Like, one of the other things that's important from a small business perspective is the security element of this, right? There's no backsies, right? If you throw your data into ChatGPT, the free model, it's going to take that data and retain it. So, for example, if you have proprietary information that's just to your business that you don't want shared, I would never do that. Now, the other part of that is that these companies that are developing these models know that. So they're all going, well, wait a minute, maybe we won't use the data you feed to us to train the model, but we are going to retain it for learning purposes. So how we can make the model better, but we won't give that data to the model. So an example of that would be in our world, let's say I fed network diagrams of one of my customers into ChatGPT. If it learned from that and then someone else went, give me the inside infrastructure of this particular client, it would give the IP addresses, the hardware, all the network information for that client to that end user. Incredibly useful if you're a hacker, right? I mean, that's like blueprint for how you get into a company. So that's where you've got to be, concerned. And then what you can do to overcome that is you can put an AI model like ChatGPT in a private cloud machine where it's only for you, feed it your data, it does learn on your data, but only you have access to it. Downside to that is it's not updated all the time, like all these other things. Like, you guys may have noticed over the last 5-10 years, you used to buy like Windows 7 and Windows 8 and Windows 10 and Windows 11, and there'll still be some of that for the foreseeable future. But these days, those code releases of it's a next new thing is almost real time. Like, you get real updates to Windows almost every night that fix problems in codes and enhance the software platform too, as well as those big, milestone code developments that come along. But it's going to be one continuous development cycle eventually.
Okay. Every pretty much every client that I work with has Microsoft and the Copilot application, but it seems like nobody that I know anyway in smaller to mid-sized businesses that I work with is using the Copilot piece. What is it that you would suggest people have in terms of infrastructure before they consider an AI implementation, if that's the route they're thinking to go?
Yeah, the first thing I would do from an AI perspective is governance. So you've got to make sure you have compliance in place and your infrastructure and how you're going to manage AI internally. So one of the first things that we do with every client is put an AI policy in place. So obviously if you're in banking versus consulting, there's two way different paradigm shifts there. The FDIC regulates what you can and can't do in banking, so you have to make that part of your AI policy. If you are into some other industry, it really varies widely on how that governance will be there. But a lot of it starts with don't feed our information into public AI. Like people use ChatGPT every day, whether you want them to or not. So you've got to make sure you have some guardrails on that. The other piece of it, what was the question again?
About infrastructure that you would have in
Yeah.
place.
So that's part of it. The other piece from an infrastructure place is, again, we mentioned doing a private AI instance in some instances, but a lot of times small and medium businesses these days are leveraging AI in their tools that vendors give them. So for example, we run a call center, and one of the tools that we use to run the call center has AI embedded in it, and it does some really cool things. So you want to make sure that when the technician picks up the phone, they answer the proper script. So it will actually read what they're saying and compare it to the script and then grade them on that. So that's one way it does it. The other thing that it'll do is it'll gauge emotion. So if someone calls up and they're screaming at a technician, it'll immediately take that recording and give it to a supervisor. So they can look at it and go, is this person upset with us? Are they upset with life in general and took it out on us? Like, how do we gauge that? How do we make sure that we're creating, raving fans with our customers? And then the other thing it can do is the analytics piece of it. So, maybe every call that comes through, you take 2 minutes between calls in order to get back in the queue to take another call. And then the average for our industry is 30 seconds. It'll gauge that and do a report card on that. So that's a good example of how AI embedded in that can make a real difference.
You just mentioned about, as a follow-up to that, you just mentioned about governance, and there's a human element to governing,
Sure.
right? And we all don't have big IT departments with governance. Is there any insights that you can provide to a small to mid-sized business owner about governance, what they should consider?
Well, at the very least, you want to make sure you have policies set up for IT, information security, AI, and those sort of things in general. Because if something ever goes wrong, you want to be able to point to the fact that, hey, I told XYZ that you shouldn't be doing that, and therefore, we were prepared from that from this leadership perspective. The size of the organization determines the amount of governance that you can do, right? With
Yeah.
very small organizations, it might be the owner, it might be some mid-level manager that's kind of making sure that governance is done properly. In larger organizations, you have a risk manager and you have some kind of department that does that function.
Yeah.
So I would say that the most important thing when it comes to starting with AI is defining what your guardrails are right now. These are going to change over time because the industry is evolving, extremely rapidly. I mean, this morning I had that conversation about Claude, which we were talking about, loading your information into an AI tool, and then does it take that information and store it? The default is ChatGPT does, but Anthropic and Claude are not doing that. So you're seeing a lot of these changes, and then who do you trust, right? So some of these guys are saying they're not doing it, but then they are, right? And I think at some point you just got to determine what your risk tolerance is, and make decisions based on that.
You've got to be really smart about this stuff, it sounds.
Well, I mean, it's just the world we live in. Information is the most valuable thing in the world to a large degree. That's why you have hackers and all this other stuff going on. So you got to be very mindful of that. What's kind of crazy with AI is today we're in the very early days, but when you look at as it evolves, it can do more. When AI can manage AI, which is like the next evolution of AI, then that's going to open up a Pandora's box of stuff, right? Like, okay, well, if AI can function to some capacity like a person, like some level of logic, does it need a credit card? Can it buy things on its own? How much authority do I give it? How do I manage it? How do I make sure it's not off the rails? Like, these questions are going to get a lot harder as we move forward. To some degree.
I don't know that I want AI spending my money on things.
Well, you may want to, this is where crypto comes into play, right? So maybe you want to give it stable coins, and it's got a budget, and that's what it can and can't do, and versus, you know, other things.
That's blowing my mind. I have an 18 and a 20-year-old at home. I can't fathom having something else stuffing my mind.
Yeah, but this is kind of the use of the, we've been talking about crypto for years, and it's been like, you know, kind of these meme coins and all this other stuff that's happened. But when you look at meaningful purposes for using crypto, I mean, one, we have Bitcoin, which is to store value, but then all these other cryptos, like, how do you use them? I think it's going to be in commerce for some reason.
Wow.
To some degree.
So, again, I'm a small to mid-sized business leader. What are some of the low-hanging fruit options that I have available to me to implement AI?
Well, a lot of it's what you talked about, like Copilot. You know, I think when you go to Google these days, anytime you Google anything, you get an AI summary. Productivity tools, for example, one thing Copilot does very well is it will go through a scenes meeting and it'll summarize that meeting, create notes, it listens for action items. So it will say, like, Cheryl, you were assigned to do this, you know, following this meeting, this is what you took for an action item. So a lot of the use cases today are about human productivity. So summarize my meeting, give me my action items, help me write a PowerPoint presentation, help me take this Word document and make it better, and then help me learn about things that I'm not really sure about. So you could say, as a small business owner, like, in my small business, you know, what KPIs should I be concerned about so that I'm growing my business effectively and keeping my margins within industry standards? And it will spit out, you know, what that should look like. Of course, you have to, again, eyeball it, make sure it's like, well, you know, it's typical in your industry to have a negative 16 gross margin. Like, obviously, like, that's not sustainable. So you've got to look at, you know, is it hallucinating or is it real?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of value there. And a lot of it's honestly free to get all that information.
Yeah.
So the only thing I'd be mindful of today is feeding it information that you wouldn't want in the world in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think something's wrong with my Copilot in that on occasion I catch it lying, and then it is just politely says, "Oh, you're right." That actually wasn't written up in a document. That's the hallucination that you're talking about?
Yeah, the hallucination piece of it is, you know, it's every time there's a new model that came out, like ChatGPT 4.0 came out and superseded 3.0, the hallucinations went up by like 25%. So every time they try to make the model better, because again, it's probabilistic, like it's saying, like, generally when this word is next to this word, it means this. Like, that's kind of the probabilistic element of AI. So when you ask ChatGPT something and then it goes, "Oh, you were right," like, we tend to, like, think about that in the human element. That's just programmed into it. Like, it doesn't care. It's just a tool, right? So, but it wants to interact in a way that, you know,
Feels human.
it feels human, right? Like, there was an example a couple of years ago, Microsoft put a chatbot out there, and they said, well, let it learn from people that, you know, feed it. And people fed it tremendously terrible things, and it became abusive.
Yeah.
And to shut it off. So, you know, it's an example of, you know, what you feed it from a training perspective is what it gives you. And again, it's still early days. Like, it's an incredibly powerful tool that you can't just not think when you use it. That'd be bad.
I saw something in a leadership format group where they were talking about, to get rid of the politeness of ChatGPT, you have to be very specific and say, I want you to hit me hard, I want you to tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
And then it can actually, like, give you bold-faced, you need to do it this way, you stink at this. And people were all excited about the fact that they had them, and they gave the prompts, like, tell ChatGPT this, this, and this, and it'll cut out all that politeness and you'll get the real feedback. And I was like, oh, that's horrible.
You make a good point, though. One of the things that you need to really do when you start to use AI in general is learn how to prompt properly.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective. For those of us that are around for a while, you know, when you start with DOS and Windows 3.1, with DOS everything was text-based. And then Windows came out and it was like, oh, now I can click and I don't have to type everything. You know, ChatGPT, look at it, it's text-based. Like, it's like, bam, back to the mid-80s, right? In computers of that era. You know, next thing you know, it'll become more GUI-based and it'll have things that you can put together. And, you know, it'll grow and evolve. But today it's very manual, it's very text-based.
Yeah.
You know, especially ChatGPT. Other tools like DALL-E, which does art, is not really text-based. But prompting is a skill that you definitely want to take a step back and make sure you learn properly, because you'll get better results and better data the better you ask questions.
So what should leaders consider in the buy versus build area of implementing AI? How do they go about doing that?
The first thing you have to start with is, what business problem am I trying to solve? What am I trying to gain? Am I trying to gain efficiency? Am I trying to, you know, reduce my labor force? Am I trying to get better outcomes for my clients? Like, once you define all of that, Then you can start to put together a plan of how you want to leverage that in AI. That might be taking existing tools that exist in your vertical and using them. It might mean implementing a fixed instance of AI and loading things into it. But it's really about business planning. So here I am now, here I'll be in 5 years. How can I leverage AI to do all of that and do it like, there's a tendency to be one and done, and it's not how this is going to work. It's going to be very evolutionary over time. Like you're going to learn something now, start with some basics, and 6 months from now you're going to want to do something else. And the other thing we see too is that boards are pushing CEOs to do something with AI, right? So then it's like, well, what are we going to do? And I guess one low-hanging fruit would be, let's put an instance of AI up and load all our HR policies in it, so that when someone wants to find out, like, do I have Christmas off, or how many vacation days does a 2-year employee get? Like, you can ask AI for those things. But at the end of the day, like, is that really going to move the needle for your organization? Is that going to make someone really want to use AI for that? Or are they just going to go there, get an answer, and go, Cheryl, I got this answer from AI. Like, is it true? Like, so, I don't know. I think Copilot's a good example of a tool that's useful. Summarizing meetings, like there's tools like Copilot will do that for you. There's another tool called Fellow, which will go out and summarize your meeting and put it through. Most UCAS or universe phone systems today have some level of AI built into the transcription services, so that when you get a voicemail, it gives you a summary of what's there. Sometimes it's pretty funny when if the person mumbles, it's like, oh, like, I have no idea what that means.
So as Bob had mentioned when he introduced you, you've seen these implementations, worked on them with clients. What are some of the common pitfalls that you can make the leaders in the room aware of in terms of AI implementation in a small to medium-sized business environment?
Yeah, the pitfalls are expecting too much, throwing it in and seeing what happens, right? Also not a good business strategy, right? So if you're going to implement AI, you've got to take a look at, how do I train my people? How do I make sure that they're aware of what it can and can't do? Make sure what it should be used for and what it shouldn't be used for. So there's a lot of that has to go on. It's no different than implementing any other business initiative. It's just, you've got to be deterministic about how you're going to go about it and not expect too much. Like if you can get some basic productivity gains in year 1, that's great. And then look at, where is this helping me, and how can I keep things moving forward? In areas like development and certain areas of technology, it's better than in other areas, right? So like Microsoft is saying right now that they're using AI to develop 33% of the code. It's massive. Microsoft has 40, 50,000 developers.
Wow.
So does that mean 20,000 people lose their jobs? Probably. So that's where it's going, which is, how do I leverage this technology to do these sorts of things? Then there's AI in disguise. Like there was a podcast I listened to today, and Elon Musk was on it, and he said that by July, there will be self-driving Teslas in the city of Austin doing Uber rides and Lyft rides. So, that obviously is AI to a certain degree, because it has to take that information and make decisions. It's a different, highly specialized version of AI. But this is an application where this is what's changing in the world.
Yeah, wow. I think the self-driving car thing is still one of those out there ideas, because they've been trying it, and there's been some scary things that have happened with that, but to your point, it's got to come.
It's always the way new technology is. Like you can't, look at the space program back in the 60s. There were lots of failures. And in fact, there was a high degree of success considering the complexity of the technology they were using. So in AI, it's really no different. But all these things, people are like, oh, that's never going to work. Like, a Waymo car crashed in the desert in Arizona. It doesn't stop anything from going on. When you look at truck driving as an industry, right? Truck driving is like the #1 industry in the U.S. I think education is #2. But if you could replace all the truck drivers with trucks that drove themselves, think about how much money that is. That's a huge incentive to do that. It's not good for truck drivers, but it is good for people that develop vehicles that replace truck drivers for half the cost, and they capture that profit. So it's like the robots that Tesla's building. People are like, why would I want a robot? Well, if you could go to work in the morning, come home, your house is cleaned, all your chores are done, it wouldn't take long before you're like, oh, if I buy this thing once, it's going to have an ROI of this compared to having a cleaning company come in all the time, and it can do these other tasks. Like, it's going to change the way we consider life, and especially as we get older, we'll do some of the tasks that, seniors need. I think that's probably one of the big use cases for robots.
Yeah, I would like one of those robots personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll cook dinner anytime soon.
Right.
But then you can always just order in, the meal service plan things.
Think about the recipes it would have access to.
Oh, yeah.
Like tens of thousands, make this meal the way they make it in Italy on Tuesday when it's sunny.
But then you gotta check it like my co-pilot, because you never know what's gonna happen. Well,
The first time you get lasagna that's got anchovies in it, you're gonna be
Yeah.
like, what happened here?
that's very true. So, final question for you, Rick. I'm a leader. What is it that I should be keeping my eyes on for the next 3 to 5 years for AI for my business so that I'm prepared? Don't want to fall behind.
Yeah, well, I would start today with the low-hanging fruit, like put some policy in place, get your governance in place, start using it to do basic tasks that you know are going to improve your outcomes, right? Like having it write emails and having it, I'm going to go into a sales meeting with this person, their personality is like this, what's the best way to talk to them? Like that's a great use of AI. So, use it to your business advantage today, and then keep your ears and eyes open on 2 different fronts. One is specific vertical technologies that are going to be useful to your industry, and then also on general AI and the evolution of it in the marketplace. And then as you take your business goals, like every year you go through business planning, I would ask myself, okay, I want to achieve this in FY26. What can I do with technology? Maybe specifically AI, but there are other fields that are emerging in technology too, like data analytics is really big right now, and then tying disparate systems together. How can I use all of that to achieve my goals? Is how I would keep looking at it. And also pay attention to your crazy nephew, because a lot of times they know a lot more than we do because they're using it every day, right? And don't take those videos you see on Instagram as gospel. Like someone's like, oh yeah, I just use it to do this and it automates everything. And it's like, yeah, but it fails 87% of the time. That's not what they're telling you, right? So. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's a very, it's cool just like the 90s were for the internet, I think, in my world, to see AI do all this. And it's a constant game of, not going too far, but, not being too conservative. And I think that's the challenge. And sometimes you just gotta take risks. But I wouldn't go out there and just spend money wildly on technologies that you don't understand. Like that would be a place that I would not start.
Yeah.
So.
I'm glad that I played an instrument in school. I'll say this as a last thought, because I think it still allowed me an ear to hear AI voice versus a regular voice, because it sounds different to me. But that's probably not going to last very long, I'm assuming.
This is another challenge we're going to face. So I did a radio broadcast on like 11:20 a.m. on Socket Radio, like 2011. And one of my developers found those recordings on YouTube, fed it into AI. And then, one of the common scams is, Cheryl, go to Walmart and buy $4,000 worth of gift cards for me. Like I sent you a text for me. They used my voice to create a script to do that. And it was real close. So, and the real danger is exploiting certain populations. Like there's stories all the time about someone who's a grandparent and their daughter's at college.
Yeah.
And they take the daughter's voice and they use it to call the grandparent and go, Grandma, I'm in jail. Wire $3,000 to this fund so I can get out. The grandmother freaks out, wires the money, and then calls the granddaughter the next day, and she's like, "What are you talking about? I was in my dorm room the whole time." So most of these scammers use emotion and fear to manipulate people, and if you're not prepared for it at all, which most people that are tired aren't paying attention to what AI is doing, it can have detrimental consequences. There's going to have to be some way to certify what's real and what's not, and it's going to get scary for a while. Yeah. If it's out of I would say if it's out of your element, whether it's an email, a voicemail, stop, confirm it.
Yeah.
Because the other thing too is spam. Everybody here gets phished in spam. If you read those emails, just be like, you'd read the email like, oh, this was written by someone who doesn't know English, it's clear. But nowadays, using AI, those emails are really much, much better.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rick.
You're welcome. Glad to be here. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick and Cheryl.